I feel like every day on this show we say this about expansion. I feel like every day on this show we say this about the changing face of college football or whatever it might be. It just feels like on a daily basis we're talking about breaking news in college football expansion. I cannot tell you how excited I am that games are just a mere 20 days away. Less than 20 days away, in fact. I am thrilled about that. But this story out of the ACC, Jake, I don't know. Maybe I'm making too much out of it, but anytime Notre Dame is involved in expansion and you have brands like Clemson, Duke, Carolina, Florida State, Stanford and Cal involved, I feel like this is a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's a lot to talk about with it. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there's the conversation around expansion and realignment obviously has been raging for months now. And yeah, there is definitely some burnout on the conversation. There's no doubt about it. But I think at the same time, like, it's an important conversation. I mean, again, you have a situation, these last 3 days or whatever, with a school that's trying to jump into a P5 conference and basically pay their way to join. And then you have another situation in that very same conference where you've got a school that is regarded by most of the conference as halfway in and halfway out. And so it's a super dynamic and fluid situation that I think we've never really seen before in college sports. And I really don't feel like that's an exaggeration. And hey, maybe I'm the youngster in the room and don't remember the 80s, but I don't remember a team ever trying to buy their way into a conference. I mean, that's pretty uncharted territory.
Yeah, and I also think in the grand scheme of things, the way finances in college athletics work, it is pretty surprising to hear what's going on with Notre Dame right now. And this confluence of events in the ACC that have all come together and sparked negativity and really a separatist movement from Florida State. And I again come back to this idea that it was a mistake for Notre Dame to put its non-football sports in the ACC. I feel like it wasn't desperate. I just feel like it was the wrong decision. You could have parked those sports in any conference you wanted. You chose the ACC, and I think it's been nothing short of an abject failure because the ACC is an abject failure. And the question I asked today is, what is Florida State going to do now? Because Florida State has nowhere to go. I don't know that they are at all valuable. They are not AAU, so the Big Ten's not going to be excited to add them. It's fine that you can raise this $120 million exit clause in the grant of rights in the ACC. That does not mean that you're going to get to take your TV rights with you. I just don't see that there are a lot of options for Florida State, who seems to be the predominant topic of conversation in the ACC. It's great they're upset, but are you really looking to pull the escape hatch here? And where are you going to go? Are you going to the Big 12? Is the Big 12 that much better off of a situation than the ACC? Because I'm here to tell you it's not. I don't believe that Florida State being added to the Big 12 is some huge leap or some huge upgrade for the Big 12. I happen to think the Big 12, is more stable. I think there's more unity, but the Big 12 is not some huge step up. It's not the SEC and it's not the Big Ten. Jake, I just don't feel like Florida State brings a lot of value to the SEC or the Big Ten, and I don't think they have anywhere to go.
Yeah, well, and I would agree with that, and I think the other side of it is there's no way for them to get out of the ACC without support, and I think that's the tough thing. Like, obviously, sure, they could pay their $120 million exit fee, but that doesn't give you your grant of rights back. That doesn't give you the ability to televise your games. And so that's why I say, they could get out of the conference, and sure, they could probably get to the Big 12, or they could get to, some of these other conferences, assuming those conferences would want them. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to just jump right into that TV contract. So for me, I look at this and I just say, hey, Florida State, like you're one of these brands that, yes, you have value. You have a good brand, but I will die on the hill as saying it doesn't matter like how good you are. in other sports. It doesn't matter to me how strong you are academically in the big picture if you're not winning on the football field at a reasonably high clip. If you're not a team or a school, an institution, not a team, an institution that is able to show the ability to raise the value of the conference with its play on the football field, to make money for the conference through football, I just don't think you have as good of a chance to get into these other conferences. And unfortunately for Florida State, they're a team and a school that yes, in the past has won. Yes, much like any other program, they have won in the past. But you haven't won recently. And when I say recently, I think college football works in 5-year cycles on the field, right? If you look at head coaching contracts, you look at the transfer portal, you look at, everything that goes on in college football, I really feel like if you've got a quarterback that you can lean on for, let's say, all 4 years, you really should be able to win at a good clip. So Florida State, for me, just isn't all that relevant. They're a brand, yes. They would be valuable on some level, but it's not like you're Alabama or Georgia or LSU or Ohio
Stanford.
State.
Here's Stanford that you seem to have this ill content for. I think Stanford's a better fit in the Big Ten than Florida State is. And I know we had a huge argument over sports. We have a difference of opinion in our argument over Stanford on this show.
Yeah.
You are vehemently anti-Stanford. You don't see value in Stanford. I tell you, Stanford's one of the best athletic departments in the country. They are easily one of the best academic partners in the country, and they are an academic ATM machine. They're going to make themselves and you and all of your partners more money, and they're AAU, and everybody wants them. I think Stanford's a much better fit in a lot of situations than Florida State is.
But I think the problem is that TV partners won't pay for Stanford. That's the problem. That's why they're not in the Big Ten, because the Big Ten didn't want to pay extra to bring those schools in. Now, if we compare Stanford to Florida State, yeah, to me, Stanford's way more valuable because of the academic side, right? Florida State doesn't have the luxury of saying, yeah, hey, by the way, here's the bird because we're the number 3 institution in the land academically. Like, that's a hammer. That's an ace in the hole. So when you compare Stanford to other institutions, absolutely Stanford has value. And I agree, they make you money in certain ways, but I don't agree with the assertion that Stanford got left for dead or left behind or they're some kind of victim. And
Stanford is a victim of circumstance. I think that's the only way you can categorize it. I would agree with you that if Stanford was a perennial playoff contender, they would be able to write their own ticket, I would guess. But the issue here is Stanford is not. But Stanford is still more valuable than Florida State.
Yes.
Because of everything else they bring to the table. They bring the Bay Area. They bring a lot of money. They bring a lot of partnerships. Again, I think everybody knows the value of Stanford. My point is that I disagree. I think Stanford is a victim of circumstance. I think Stanford is a victim of being so passive in a Pac-12 that was disintegrating that now you kind of made your bed that you're lying in right now. And it's remarkable to me that not one but 2 of the best academic institutions in this country don't have a home. They do not have a home. Sure, would the American take Stanford and Cal? Yeah, absolutely. Right? But if you're Stanford and Cal, are you trying to get to the American? You're not.
But isn't Cal's situation a little bit different because of the debt load? Isn't Cal's situation a little bit more difficult? Like,
more desperate?
Yeah.
More desperate? Sure it is.
Yeah. For Cal, it's more desperate. Absolutely. I mean, Stanford, again, I think the other piece of value for Stanford is they're super well run. Like, obviously, like I just said, my opinion is that they are not a victim of circumstance here because you have made the choice to be so dominant in academics that it's required you to choose to lay back a little bit in athletics. And I'm not even saying that that's like a horrible choice or you're an idiot. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying that that's what Stanford did. Yeah, that's what Stanford did.
Look, guy, I know you're Stanford, but you're not very bright.
So
here.
everyone wants to say, oh, well, hey, the Pac-12 burned to the ground. And because Stanford was dynamic with David Shaw in 2015 and the years before that. They were really good on the football field. And then the last, it's 2023, the last 8 years, you really just haven't done a ton. You haven't made a ton of noise.
I think post-COVID, there was very little effort to recruit at a high level and win a lot of games in either basketball or football.
Yeah.
And I guess to a certain extent, I understand why. Because football is 27th at Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I don't think it's right, but I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But who are we to tell Stanford how to do their bidding?
And that's fine. I agree with that. We don't need to tell Stanford how to do anything. They've got $1 billion endowment for athletics. They're an amazing, institution for education, which is, again, why I say I don't feel like there's been some injustice done to them. It does suck. It's terrible for college football and just college athletics on the whole that Stanford doesn't have a home.
Is there an injustice being done to Washington State and Oregon State?
Oregon State, I would say, not Washington State. Washington State has made its bed with the athletic department and what Kirk has done, but Oregon State, in my opinion, Oregon State. The only difference between Oregon State and a program like Cal is Oregon State's football program actually is good. They're a 10-win football program, and the basketball program is going the right direction. But what's Oregon State's problem? And this is my main point in the whole thing. If you apply the word relevancy to every program. Hey, is Oregon State relevant in the big picture? The answer is no. They're not relevant. Oregon's relevant. Oregon State is not relevant in football and basketball. So is Stanford relevant in football and basketball? No. Is Cal relevant? No. Right? But Utah has been fighting for relevancy for some time now. And they're relevant because they went to the Rose Bowl twice and lost twice. Right? So you look at these other programs like Florida State. Florida State is, I guess, somewhat relevant, but you haven't done much.
Yeah, I'm not here to compare Florida State to Oregon State and Washington State. I think Florida State is a power college football brand who hasn't been much of a powerhouse in the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I just think as we sit here today, and what our sources are telling us happened yesterday, the ACC got together and had a meeting, and there was some frustration vented towards Notre Dame. Notre Dame has been lobbying hard to add Stanford and Cal to the ACC. But as I've told you for going on 2 weeks now, it makes zero sense for the Atlantic Coast Conference to have two California teams. And that's it. It makes no sense whatsoever. It doesn't make economic sense. You can split that money pie any way you want it. Because ESPN, according to our sources in TV, was willing to pay for Stanford and Cal to be in the conference. They were willing to do that. So money wasn't going to be the issue. The issue is the net. What is the net gain? There's no net gain for the ACC in adding Stanford and Cal. And furthermore, on SMU, straight up, the members of the ACC, from what our sources told us, see zero value in adding SMU, even for free for 5 years. Because we had it exclusively, and now others have confirmed it, that SMU donors were willing to give SMU $200 million over 5 years to cover no rights fees from the ACC. And the ACC had not a little interest. I was told no interest. It never got off the ground for SMU. They were never getting an invite to the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
And then Notre Dame happened. And Notre Dame was lobbying and pushing and pushing. It's that fight you had with your wife where she was like, we're not buying a new car. We're not buying a new car. We're not buying a new car. Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. No, we're not. Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. Shut up. I don't want to hear about it anymore.
I want it.
And Notre Dame just kept going. Stanford and Cal. Stanford and Cal. Stanford and Cal. And finally, from what we were told, several members said, hey, Bring your football program here, and until you do, shut up. We're not interested. And I think there is the word that I've heard multiple times about Notre Dame and the ACC, there is a high level of resentment towards Notre Dame from ACC members because they're 1 foot in and 1 foot out. They're doing what's best for themselves in football, and that's being independent and trying to tell the ACC what's best for them in football. And the ACC doesn't want to hear it. And I totally understand that.
Yeah.
I 100% understand why members of the ACC would have resentment towards Notre Dame, who is essentially double dipping on media rights fees. You got to remember that. Yeah, they're getting a smaller percentage from the ACC, but they don't care because they're going to get $75 million a year from NBC in their new deal. So they don't care about that. It's simply a matter of the haves versus the have-nots. And the thing that's shocking to me is Florida State doesn't have anywhere to go. And again, I'm open to this argument. Where the hell is Florida State going to go? And everybody tells me I'm crazy and Florida State's got value and the Big Ten wants Florida State. I'm telling you, man, the Big Ten doesn't want Florida State. They're not AAU and they don't go to the college football playoff. Period. It's not like Florida State is some big influx of energy, money, viewership, reach. None of that comes with good old Florida State. What the Big Ten wants is Notre Dame football. And I think that's very clear. It's where Notre Dame belongs, in fact. That's why they didn't take Stanford and Cal, because I think they know with all of the partners that are involved, look at who does business with the Big Ten. NBC, who's in bed with Notre Dame. And if it's true that Bob Iger at Disney is trying to broker a minority share to Comcast, NBC, Universal, dude, all the synergy in the world is there. Notre Dame's going to get paid 2-3 times, let alone once from the ACC. So it makes all the sense in the world. And if you're Florida State, you're pissed off about that. You're bitter about that. You resent Notre Dame for that. And I think there's a lot of that because Florida State thinks that they should be able to write their own ticket. And if we're being brutally honest, you can't write your own ticket when the Big Ten won't take your phone call. And when you look at the SEC doesn't want your phone call. And why doesn't the SEC want your phone call? Because they've already got Florida. And Florida's never going to grease the skids of Florida State coming to the SEC. It's not fucking happening. So you look at that situation, and what's the one place left for Florida State? The Big 12. And why is the Big 12 going to be beating down Big Brother pain in the ass Florida State when they've already got Central Florida and Orlando? And frankly, if they really wanted more of Florida, wouldn't they add South Florida? Wouldn't they take Tampa? Because that gives them far more reach than Tallahassee in Florida State, who's been nothing but a malcontent for 3 years. And frankly, has not been a good partner and doesn't appear to be headed down the good partnership road.
Yeah.
So why would a conference that seemingly has made very few missteps in the last 18 months, from Bob Bowlesby brokering expansion to Brett Yormark's hire to his execution? By the way, again, I don't know if you noticed what was in our email today. Yeah, the Big 12 in the last 2 days has sent 2 emails of note. Number one is, hey, Big 12 basketball media days will be in Kansas City on this date and this time.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what did we get today? Yeah, the Big 12 Dr. Pepper Championship college football game will be at AT&T Stadium. Tickets go on sale. Here's a link. Like, they're rolling in the Big 12.
Yes.
Do they need a heavy to come in and try and push them around in Florida State?
Nope.
I'm telling you. And again, I'm sure that people are pissed off and everybody, the Big Ten wants 2 schools. And remember, good old Uncle Monty, and I know we've been wrong on everything in expansion. But you remember I told you this. The Big Ten wants Notre Dame and North Carolina. That's who they want to be 19th and 20th. Will they get that? I don't know. We'll see. Bubba Cunningham's an operator. I don't think the athletic director at North Carolina is an operator. and they have a president with an appetite who's turned Bubba loose to do what Bubba needs to do. If the ACC melts down, it's not Florida State going to the Big Ten. I would bet my Johnson on that. Mm-hmm. Okay, I probably wouldn't. But the point is, I think we've been damn good on expansion. And I'm telling you, Notre Dame and North Carolina are the two schools you should watch if the Big Ten ever expands.
Yeah, and I think those would be great brands in the Big Ten. Absolutely.
And I feel like we've turned into the anti-Florida State show.
Well, I don't think we're anti-Florida State. I just think that I think if you're in the SEC, or if you're an SEC fan, or you're an ACC fan, you see a lot of value in Florida State because you see them regularly. And what I'm telling you is I see them enough. I watch the games when they're playing, and I just don't see some dominant force right now. And I think because it works both ways, right? You don't have to be a national championship contender every year to be relevant and to have value to a new conference that you'd want to go to. But it certainly helps your case. And I think the problem for Florida State is they just haven't done anything. And so, yeah, the Big 12 has no need to add a pain in their ass to the conference. And the Big 10 and the SEC, unfortunately for Florida State, know what they want, and they're not going to misstep or just give in, and so that's why I think it's tough. But again, when I look around realignment altogether, like saying no definitively to SMU, I think is really smart for the ACC.
So do
like we said yesterday, there's not a lot of value coming from SMU side outside of hey, we're free, but conferences on the ACC's level are not necessarily interested in free. They're interested in how can you push us forward.
And again, as much as I hear that the ACC hates Notre Dame, man, I cannot tell you how many sources in the Big 12 have talked about what a pain in the ass Florida State's been.
Yeah.
That on top of this argument over what is the better conference, because we have heard this a lot the last 3 weeks. The ACC or the Big 12. Man, I don't even think it's close in football. No. I think the Big 12 is a far better conference.
Yeah.
With what Sonny Dykes did at TCU.
Yeah.
And what it looks like they'll continue to, like, top to bottom with expansion, now with the four corners. I think Utah is going to contend to win that conference from day one. I think what Jed Fish is building at Arizona, prime at Colorado. Kenny Dillingham ain't doing nothing at Arizona State.
Mm-hmm.
They've got 37 quarterbacks, I know. But you look at the four incoming teams on top of Houston, Cincinnati, Central Florida, BYU. You're a better football conference than the ACC. But God dog, aren't you a better basketball conference than the ACC as well? And again, I'm a North Carolina guy. North Carolina, I don't know what they are. The way that college basketball has changed. And the one and done has changed college basketball, in my opinion, so dramatically.
Right.
Like, and again, Carolina's a great example. They go to the championship game, 2 years ago?
2022 versus Kansas.
Yeah, they lose to Kansas. And then you don't make the tournament or any postseason play this past year. Welcome to the era of one and dones.
Yeah.
Right? You got guys like Bob Hurley at ASU turning over his entire roster through the portal multiple years in a row. Mm-hmm. Welcome to one and dones in college basketball.
And I think you look at the champions in men's college basketball the last several years, and the Big 12 has been hot recently. That's the reality.
But look at San Diego. Mm-hmm. How did San Diego State wind up there?
Yeah.
Well, because they built a program and they were really savvy with who they brought in through the portal. And
yep.
That's the way college basketball is. On a sheet of paper, the Big 12 is a better basketball conference than the ACC, in my opinion. I think it's not close in college football.
Yeah.
And I would love to get your comments on this, because I just think it is.
I think the ACC, to be honest with you, in overall in the big picture, like the last 10 years, has been the better postseason conference, no doubt. I mean, you may find really good regular season teams in the Big 12, but when I think of the North Carolinas, the Dukes, the Virginias especially, like those are all powerhouse postseason teams. But I think the tough part is that like you just said, like North Carolina didn't even make a playoff appearance last year or this past season.
How wild is that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy to say, and I agree, it is the best example of, hey, like this is the one and done era. And so I'm looking at this list of, hey man, like who won the championship championship and who was the runner-up, like, okay, again, this past season, UConn won and San Diego State. Okay, great. That's kind of a one-off, right? But I look at 2022, Kansas wins, North Carolina is the runner-up. Baylor wins, Gonzaga is the runner-up, right? Nothing in 2020 due to the pandemic. Before that, Virginia wins, Texas Tech is the runner-up. Both of the conferences we're talking about, right? Then I've got Villanova and Michigan. The Big Ten decided to wake the hell up in basketball. But I just
that's
look
a great
at this.
point.
I just look at this and it's like, dude, like it is the ACC and the Big 12. There's no doubt about it.
But again, to my point about Notre Dame in the Big Ten is a hoax. And Oregon and Washington, we battled over this, and so on the show we have a pre-show meeting.
Behind the scenes, top secret,
shit, right? Like, but we sit around and we go over, hey, we're going to talk about this. Well, we don't just say, okay, we're going to talk about the ACC. All right, cool, bro. We're like, hey, what are you going to talk about? What do you think of this? Where do you think of this? And we battled over the quality of Oregon and Washington and what that really means to the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it helps them in football. But does Oregon and Washington in college basketball do anything for a conference?
Mean a damn thing.
Right? Like the Big Ten has nothing in college basketball.
Nope. Well, but they're a conference, and again, this is how the SEC was until recently. Right? The SEC wasn't a damn thing in basketball. They were a football conference, and basketball was a nice little hobby they had on the side.
Yeah.
And that's what the Big Ten was as well. And then what happened? Michigan started showing up a little bit. Ohio State had one nice year, like, the one-off Penn State year. And the SEC obviously, has good representation.
But the basketball ability of the ACC is unquestioned.
Correct.
Whether you want to talk about Virginia, obviously Duke, Carolina, whoever you want to point to. Even Florida State has shown that they can be competent.
Yeah.
Right? Miami has shown they can be competent. That does not hold a candle to the Big 12, who top to bottom, whether it's Tech, anybody you want to point to in that conference. Hell, BYU. Have you ever played church ball on carpet? BYU is happy to drag you into a dogfight. Look at their battles with Gonzaga, right? The Big 12 is just a better conference. So why is the Big 12 going to go out of its way to poke the ACC bear by taking Florida State and fighting legally in court to get TV distribution rights? They're not going to do that.
No.
And Florida State doesn't bring a whole lot of equity.
Well, and I think, again, it goes without saying, you guys all know this, on the football side, like the national championship list is definitive. I mean, obviously dominated
Absolutely.
by the SEC. And then what do I get? Right? So, like, 22, 21, 20, 19, all SEC. 2018, Clemson wins the national championship with 5 foreheads, right? Like, come on, dude, we get it. Then I get Alabama. Then forehead decided to show up in 2016 with Clemson. Alabama again. Oh, wow. The Big Ten decided to show up with the Ohio State. Like, it is quite literally the SEC and everybody else in the sport that matters most. And that's why I said that's why basketball matters. Because if you can get national championships in basketball, you're just boosting that revenue for years on end, because like the Big Ten knows in football, there's one team, and it's not Michigan in his khakis.
I'm of the opinion that if Florida State shuts up and just focuses on winning court and field games of consequence.
2013 was their last national championship.
It's been 10, but that's what I've been saying for a week. It's been 10 years.
Before that, 1999.
It's been 10 years of just terrible hires, average recruiting, and zero development. Can Norvell change that? I have no idea. But my point is, if Florida State would just shut up and win games, if Miami would just shut up and win games, and I understand in Miami it's a different deal, like the politics, the inner workings of Miami-Dade and really from Fort Lauderdale all the way down to the Keys is a political disaster. It is very hard to operate in that atmosphere. I totally get it. But if Miami would just shut up and win games, if the Canes had come back and be Catholics versus convicts, and this league would be transformed.
God bless.
You would make a lot more money because Carolina and Duke are going to win basketball games. Even as one and dones. Duke is Duke, right? Like Carolina's Carolina. You're going to win games. You are. But you need somebody to come with you.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of hearing about, well, we're at Florida State, bro. You know, like we're doing the chopping. We get more money.
Hey, guys.
No, you
Hey,
don't.
guys.
Deion's gone. Anquan Bolden's gone, right? Derek Brooks is gone. Bobby Bowden's dead and gone. Like, I'm telling you, you are nothing at Florida State right now. Prove me wrong. Because you want to win? You want the ACC to be this special thing? Win games. Win games, Michigan. Win games, Purdue. Win games, Iowa. Because I don't mean to get so passionate. This fires me up. I look at the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, the SEC. There ain't no such thing as the Pac-2 anymore, but whatever. You're not as good as the top of your conference. Do you get that? Do you understand that if Vanderbilt ever wins 10 games in football, the SEC is the best conference ever? Ever. If Georgia Tech shows up, the ACC, if Virginia Tech, if they're playing Beamer ball again, the bottom half of your conference, that's what determines your quality. Why do you think the lane train is so flippin' important to the SEC?
Facts.
Right? Who wants to go to Oxford? Well, now apparently a lot of football players do. Right? Look at State. Look at Mississippi State. How much better is that league when Mississippi State competes? Well, we don't know because they never compete.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Jimbo at Texas A&M. Perfect example. Recruiting wizard doesn't develop anybody. They suck. They're irrelevant. Do you understand that the bottom half of these leagues, if I could get Indiana, Purdue, if Rutgers would do anything in that league, if Maryland would just reincarnate
because it's
Gary
garbage.
Williams, give me Gary Williams.
Yeah, I know what time it is.
Just some of you idiots, buy a new basketball floor and give away free hot dogs and your building will be full. Utah. You want to know when the Big 12 becomes the undefeated behemoth? Let the running Utes get back going in basketball.
Yeah.
Forget it's over. It's over. If the BYU-Utah rivalry becomes something, you know what's going to happen? Though that we're going to raise all tide. The tide's going to raise all ships. Because I'm telling you, them boys down in Provo can play hoop. They can play basketball. But they haven't. Basketball has been a zero in the state of Utah. But now you're in the Big 12 and there's more money and there's Kansas City. Maybe Mark Harlan, you're a hell of an athletic director.
Going.
Find somebody to put the ball through the hoop.
Yeah.
That's when the Big 12 becomes unbeatable. Whew.
What's up, motherfuckers?
Dude. I want games so badly. But do not pull the ripcord and get me running on the Big Ten.
I'm for real. I'm for real.
Hey, man. There are certain truths that are unspoken.
There is no question.
The Big Ten is the most overrated sports entity in the history of sports entities.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of hearing about how great the Big Ten is.
Yeah.
All two of you. I'm tired of hearing about how great Florida State is. Well, and I always love it. Wow, Charlie Ward was a better NBA player than he was a quarterback at Florida State. And he's the best quarterback ever. It's fucking Nebraska. Stop talking about Tommy Frazier. Stop talking about Lawrence Phillips, right? Stop. Because nobody cares. Matt Rule is who I want to talk about. Trev Alberts, the athletic director, not the defensive end outside linebacker. The athletic director at Nebraska is who I want to talk about. Because I'm tired of all these schools that are like, oh, well, and to your point about Stanford, Toby Gerhardt ain't walking through that door anytime soon, dude. He's not doing it. You win now. And I'm starting to kind of, no, that's a lie. You're not very bright.
Play intramurals, brother.
I'll never agree with you. Stanford's a victim of Kirk Schultz at Washington State.
Congratulations, but that's bullshit.
They're not. Yeah, they're not. All right, the Monty Show, as always, this hour of the show is presented by our good friends who are giving you great tickets to see Texas at Baylor on September 23rd. We, friends, are just 25 hours away from announcing the winner of our contest to send you to Waco. see Texas at Baylor.
Hug 'em.
And we are at about 50 entries now. Mm-hmm. And it's really easy to win these. So before I get to your comments, number one, hit the like button. You guys, hit the like button. If you are not subscribed, please consider doing so. We are just 86 subscribers away on YouTube.
Dude, come on.
We're from 23,000.
And by the way, we're trying to get to 25 before kickoff, and we're on pace if we can get there by the end of this week.
Let's go. Let's get
23,000 by the end of the week, dude.
No, let's get there today. Let's get to 23,000 right now. If we get to 23,000 by the end of the show, we'll give away a $100 Amazon gift card.
And we already have given one away. We're good to our word on that.
I'm telling you. I am telling you. Let's go. Hook it up. Hit the subscribe button. But to win the tickets to see our good friends at Texas and Baylor, speaking of overrated.
Yeah.
Hello, Sarkville. 9:23 in Waco, McLean Stadium. We're giving you the tickets. All you have to do is go to TryDayTrading.com, sign up for the $10 30-day trial membership. Now, that $10 is a charitable donation, so it is 100% tax deductible for you. By the way, if I said, hey, give me $10, I'll give you a pair of tickets to see Texas at Baylor, would you do it? Of course you'd do it. That's exactly the proposition we're making. Once you get into Tri-Day Trading's 30-day trial membership, hey, at the end of that, you don't want to continue, you don't have to. No obligation, no further cost. But I'm telling you, it'll change your life.
Yes.
$10 gets you a path to financial freedom, but it also gets you a pair of tickets to see Texas at Baylor. Take a screenshot that you signed up for the $10 30-day trial. Tag us on Instagram or Twitter, The Monty Show, MONTY, The Monty Show, and let's do it. Tomorrow, 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, right here live on the show, we will announce the winner. And looking at it, we're at 49 entries.
Mm-hmm.
So you got a 1 in 49 chance right now.
It's pretty good.
You have a really good chance to win these tickets. Hook it up at TryDayTrading.com. Let's get your comments in here. Great to see everybody. Michael Williams, who's been a member for 4 months, says, hey, fellas, have a great show. Thank you, Michael. We appreciate it. Matt Ritson gives us $5. What's next for Stanford and Cal after getting roadblocked? She'll be coming around the Mountain West Conference. Yeah. Well, it's funny. Gloria Navarez went on radio in Boise and said that they're ready to add Oregon State and Washington State, and said without saying that they've invited them and they're simply just waiting. And I was told by a TV guy last night that the AAC is aggressively trying to add all 4 of those Pac-12 teams. So can you imagine Stanford and Cal being in the AAC?
Bro,
that would be, I don't know. That would be bizarro land. But I ultimately think Stanford and Cal end up in the Mountain West because it's only a 2-year run.
Yeah.
It is only a 2-year run. I think their TV deal expires in 2026.
Yeah, it could be a smart play.
So it's a short-term fix for long-term gain. Because I think at that point you're going to be looking at a much different college athletic landscape for certain. And by the way, it's only $17 million to get out, which is nothing.
When you have $1 billion sitting there, I think you're all right.
Yeah, I think you're fine. Nick Kerr for $2. Notre Dame needs to join the ACC and all sports are hush. That tends to be the belief system in AAC country. Mm-hmm. It was a mistake to allow them to join without the football team.
Well,
I think that was a mistake.
Now you know that. Now you know that.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake. AGM gives us $2. Will universities sell their own product via streaming? This is a really interesting question. So obviously the meltdown in the Pac-12,
right,
as we reported and now multiple presidents in the league have confirmed, was that the Apple deal was 100% and no way, no how. And this actually warmed my bosoms when I heard this, I think it was yesterday, because we had reported for months and months and months, Apple will not share distribution.
Yeah,
Apple will not partner with Amazon or ESPN or CBS or anybody else.
Yeah,
Apple will say no, they will not do it.
Yeah.
And what are all the presidents in the now defunct Pac-12 saying? Yeah, Apple wouldn't allow us to share our linear rights. The Apple deal was dead on arrival because the old heads that run the Pac-12 were never going to go 100% streaming.
Yeah.
So I don't think that is the same thing as we don't embrace streaming. I think those are two totally different conversations. I am of the belief, I am of the belief that college football clubs need to retain some of their own distribution, because I think every single game, and think about the team in your town, right? Think about the team in your city. If you're in Dallas, Texas, TCU should be on local TV every single week.
Yeah.
No question about it. I am a big believer that if you go all stream, you should absolutely have the right to have a local TV deal. Ion Scripts, great example with the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Sure, Las Vegas Golden Knights are going to be on the national package on ESPN, NHL Network, no doubt about that. They're going to be on Ion Scripts in Nevada, Idaho, and Utah. It's a phenomenal deal.
Yeah.
You look at the deal Ion Scripts did with the WNBA. Double headers on Friday night, I guess.
Yeah.
But all those are local. So if you're in Phoenix, all of our great Phoenicians, you're always getting the Phoenix Mercury games on Ion TV locally, no matter what. It's brilliant.
Yes.
It is the way that you operate. So I do think, I agree with you, AJ. I think that on some level, you are going to have to, as a university, retain your rights and make a deal. Can you imagine Alabama not being broadcast in Tuscaloosa?
No.
Or not being broadcast across the state of Alabama?
Well, and I think that's why you got to give these universities the ability to sell more broadly. I mean, obviously they can do stadium deals and they can do campus deals and stuff like that. But I really do believe that putting yourself, and this is why I always say the grant of rights is archaic. I mean asking 10, 12, 20 individual businesses essentially to team together to allow one person who is your governing body to work with TV partners to make you the money. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And what nobody ever talks about is, okay, so if Fox and ESPN and everyone is paying a fee per school in totality to the conference, how much is Fox actually making back? What is the...
It's a great question.
So if Fox pays the conference $1 for the grant of rights, and each school is getting 10 cents, is Fox making $2 or $3 on that whole deal? Is Fox making $10 on a $1 investment? Like that's what I'm talking about. Nobody ever thinks about the Fox, ESPN, CBS, NBC side of it because it's just not talked about. We all want to say ESPN's dying and they're some terrible company, but we never want to talk about the fact that they make $1 billion a year on streaming. They probably make more than that on linear and all the sales they do and all the relationships they have.
Look what Disney announced today.
Yeah.
A significant increase in pricing for their streaming deals. And what happened? Their stock price shot up. Wall Street loved it. Consumers are willing to pay for streaming.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me that an Oregon Duck fan wouldn't pay for a Big Ten streaming package, I would tell you out your goddamn mind.
And I also
because they will.
Dude, I also think that allowing individual institutions to handle their broadcasts and distribution, what does that do? Well, that puts a ton of pressure on the haves and the have-nots.
Yes, it does.
Right? Because I don't want to hear this garbage about how hey, this school just, they're not able to recruit and they're not able to do this and do that. Okay,
Poor little fella.
Well, that's the reality of the world, right?
Yes,
Everyone
it is.
wants to tell us we're the hacks on YouTube and we can't do anything. Okay, that's cool. We're happy to be that. But the reality is we are doing stuff because we have that ability. We have that opportunity to go out and make things happen. And Florida State, apparently, in their opinion, does not, right? Like these schools don't.
Yeah.
So that's the issue.
Yep, I agree. Let's give a couple of shout-outs. Mike Rayner, big shout-out to you. Mike gave away 10 memberships.
Let's go, baby. Strong start to the program.
Let's go. 11 new members on the show already today. Hit the join button. You have 2 levels. $1.99 gets all of your comments highlighted. We read member comments first every day on this show. For $9.99, you get into our members-only group on Instagram. The chat is fantastic. It is just a really good group of dudes. The chats are fabulous. Hook it up, $9.99 to get into our exclusive members-only content. Or you can hang out at $1.99 and get all your comments read. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for the 10 people who just subscribed to the show. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
You guys, we're just 76 subscribers
Let's go.
away from 23,000.
Get her done.
$100 if on Amazon. We'll give you a $100 Amazon gift card. All you have to do is get us to 23,000 subs, 76 more by the end of the show. Jim, the UW dog fan, Big Ten is reserving a spot for Notre Dame and maybe Stanford. I don't think there's any question that the moment Notre Dame bows their head, they're into the Big Ten.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. I don't know ultimately where Stanford ends up. I think if Stanford gets into the Big Ten, you're talking about a 20-plus member Big Ten. Because I think the Big Ten, and a lot of people around college athletics, believe that a significant shift in the build of the ACC is coming. And I find it hard to believe that you would take Stanford over North Carolina. That you would take, I just think that's hard to believe. You have 4 teams in the West now. You don't need Stanford.
Yeah.
You don't need Cal. I find it hard to believe because I think it is a natural fit with Stanford into the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm.
They're already making money. I think they've got to focus on winning at some point. And if you're going to go over 20 to add Stanford, why would you do that?
Yeah, I don't think you would.
I don't think you would either.
No.
I really don't think you would. Matt Riley, a new member of the show. What's up, Matt Riley? Thank you for joining. I'll do it eventually. Gives us $2. FSU brings more to the Big Ten than Nebraska did 10 years ago. Oh, do tell. Do tell, because I think they're very similar. I think Florida State fans, you're living in the past. I don't think you at what is Willie Taggart a guy you're hanging on to? Or in all seriousness, it's been 10 years. That was 10 years ago you were relevant.
Yeah.
Florida State football has not been relevant. You've had great players. Derwin James, Dalvin Cook, great players. You haven't developed those guys. And Mike Norvell needs to win. And I just asked, we went through this yesterday. How do they win more than 9 games this year?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they win 11, 12 games, okay, we're having a different conversation. Because they're in the college football playoff at that point. But I don't see that Florida State brings this incredible value and got to have them. And yeah, I don't think so. I don't see that. Tom Dean for $2. If Notre Dame and Stanford if Notre Dame loves Stanford so much, package deal to the Big Ten. I don't think it's that Notre Dame loves Stanford. I think Notre Dame believes Stanford and Cal add value to the ACC. Their version of the ACC.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with them. I don't. And frankly, again, just doing a bunch of conversating with sources on these travel expenses, it really comes down to softball. It really comes down to baseball, tennis, golf. Because, again, swimming is already doing group meets. Every major swimming program already travels the country to group meets.
Yep.
Your lacrosse and, field hockey. I was talking about lacrosse last night with somebody. Lacrosse already travels to the Northeast.
Well, and I think the other point that I love about the whole travel thing is there's logistics with it, but we're not traveling across the country on horse and wagon here, right? Let's not.
I don't think it's that. I think it is the toll it takes on your athletes. And at Stanford, again, this is the biggest concern.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
How do you tell a kid you got to have honors classes or really high-level classes, and you've got to graduate with honors, and we're not going to accept you into our master's program if you don't have a 7.0 grade point average. By the way, we're going to need you to travel across the country for that baseball tournament. Or we're going to need you to go on that, swing through the Carolinas. But I have 4 quizzes and a test and a bunch of just make sure that your slugging percentage stays high, champ.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, champ? All right, great, thanks. All right, thanks for coming in. How do you do that at Stanford? And the answer is I don't think you do that. I don't think you do that.
Wow.
And I think Stanford would have gladly entered the ACC. I think if you'd invited them, they would have entered.
Yeah.
I don't know what the outcome of that would have been. I am open to the idea. I am too much of an idealist. I'm open to that idea.
Yeah, I think I agree with the concept that the student athlete takes a beating. There's no doubt. I mean, it's vigorous. It's difficult. It's not easy. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
I'm not disputing that the student athlete goes through a lot. What I am disputing is that all I ever hear about with Stanford is $1 billion endowment for athletics, which tells me
they do.
You have the money to add more structure, more support, more resources. Like, you have the ability, and this is kind of where I guess I don't know if we disagree on this, but I think if you have $1 billion endowment for athletics that you want to ride your high horse on a little bit, I would then say, okay, if that's the case, then let's make travel a little cushier. Let's bring more support staff for academics. Let's make things possible, because money makes things possible. So I don't know. Maybe that's too simple. Maybe that's too straight to the point. But
I don't know if it is or not. I don't know, because again, Stanford's not talking, which they shouldn't be.
And I agree. Yeah, I agree. You shouldn't be talking. And again, I'm not disputing the fact that Stanford is academics first, but you do have an athletic department, and it does happen to be really well run. So I just don't buy, like, we're not going to play this gray area with Stanford. You either have a great athletic department and it's well run, or you're going to put academics first, and athletics just is what it is. And if it happens to be good, it happens to be good.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have it both ways. And so I tend to think it's, hey, we put everything in our basket in academics, and our athletics just happens to be well run. But that doesn't mean we're going to give, an extra couple $100 million a year to our athletic department to make cushier travel and to make it easier. And that's the tough part for me.
It is. Matt Ritson for $5 says, what Stanford have? President, bad AD, what killing school Stanford banned and tree mascots, but great Olympic sports.
Oh, what did he say?
Sort of. I think they're talking about the band and admission. Do you guys understand that Colorado lowered their admission standards so they could hire Deion Sanders?
Right.
Stanford did not do that. So they lost David Shaw. Stanford is incredibly difficult to get into. So if you take the average Deion Sanders recruit, is he able to get into Stanford? No, he's probably not. He's probably not. If you take the average Dan Lanning recruit at Oregon, are they able to get into Stanford? No, they're probably not. So it's cool you can have an edict of you got to win football games. But the overreaching edict is we need Bryce Love caliber intelligence, really good student, really smart guy who was bulletproof in high school, served his community, was in band, was in the homecoming and prom court, saved old ladies from puddles crossing the street, and kissed at least 740 babies.
And then still pounded the A gap.
And by the way, is an honors student and took all accelerated classes. How many of those offensive tackles you think exist? Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. One? Well, then what do you say to their 2-deep and their 3-deep depth chart?
Yeah.
Good luck. That's what I say. So it is what it is. And you'll still add them to your conference in 9 out of 10 situations. Cyclone Steve, Clemson, Virginia, 2 SEC. Who else if they want 20? Well, I mean, Virginia would be a nice ad. I think the SEC would be foolish not to pick up the phone and call Bubba at North Carolina.
Agreed.
Because if you're going to go to the ACC, if you're going to raid the ACC, you're not going for Clemson and Virginia only.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Yeah, you're not.
You're not. And Florida's never going to let Florida State into the SEC.
And don't tell me the long-term plan for the SEC isn't to move up the Eastern board there. Come on. If you're the SEC, that's what you're trying to do. I loved what Greg Sankey said on Feinbaum earlier this week, where he's talking about how they don't need to be four time zones to be relevant. They don't need, they've already got the top brands, and I agree. So
tell me he wasn't taking a shot at the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think he's taking a shot at the Big Ten. I think by extension he's taking a shot at Florida State on some level, saying, hey, we don't see anybody out there that we need to chase for expansion. Not that Florida State technically is available, but you get my drift. They're sending a message. And again, I'm telling you, we are in an arms race to the beginning of the negotiating period for the ACC grant of rights, because whoever gets, UNC, Duke, Clemson, like whatever happens there probably defines college football for the next 10 years after that.
I'm still not convinced you're getting out of that grant of rights. It's bulletproof.
Yeah.
It's bulletproof, man. You've got to get 9 members to say we want out. How are you going to do that? You can't get anybody to even take a vote last night on adding Stanford and Cal. And the only thing they agreed on was no to SMU and that Notre Dame's a bag of dicks. That's the only thing all of those ACC people agreed on. They didn't even vote by most accounts.
Yeah.
What are we talking about, right? Gary Wolf for $2 would love to see the Big 12 ACC challenge in hoops. Yeah, you and I 3. Dabo's 805 winning percentage. Clemson would go undefeated in the Big 12. Well,
in God's name, image, and likeness.
I'm okay with you smoking hash in the middle of the day.
We built this program on NIL.
I'm okay with your penchant for hallucinogens like this.
We really did.
I'm okay with that. When you come around, let us know, and we can have a serious conversation about how far down the run Clemson would be.
It's probably different than what you're thinking, though.
That's fine.
Program.
Curtis. Gotta love Dabo, don't you? Do you think the Big 12 starts its own network? I do not. Those days are done.
No, and that's because Brett's just too damn good at negotiating. I mean, again, and that's the other thing about this side piece conversation about when is grants of rights going to die, and when are these schools going to be able to sell their own, situations, if you will?
Yeah.
And I think in the Big 12, you don't want grants of rights to die because Brett Yormark is really good at negotiating. In the SEC, certainly you don't want grants of rights to die. But again, like if you're the top dogs, if you're, let's see, Ohio State, Michigan, Bama, LSU, Georgia, Clemson, like if you're these top dogs, you want to be able to sell your own stuff because you will make more and more and more and more.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think, listen, there's no doubt in my mind that money is the root of all motivation in college sports, especially with realignment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you look at Florida State, I think Florida State has nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. So just chill out, relax. And if I were you, I would download the Papa Murphy's app and order that calzone.
At Papa Murphy's, we do more than just pizza. We do calzones.
Papa Murphy's does calzones?
Oh, I think you mean I do the calzones.
And how do you do it, Dad?
How do I do it? How do I do it?
Well, we do it with fresh ingredients and hand-shredded cheese tucked in a scratch-made dough.
That's how, honey.
At Papa Murphy's, we make great pizza.
You don't forget the calzones.
Order now at papamurphys.com.